keep eating them. I'm gonna keep really high.
Madam Mayor, it is 6:05 and we are live.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City of Lake Worth Beach Utility City Commission meeting on Tuesday, September 26, 2023. May we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Betty Resch,
Here.
Vice Mayor Christopher McVoy,
Also here.
Commissioner Sarah Maliga is coming, Commissioner Kimberly Stokes,
Here.
Commissioner Ronaldo Diaz.
Here.
Please rise for this flag. Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, okay. Okay. It's utility meeting, so it's a little bit different. We have presentations with no public comment. The first is presentation A from Mr. Liberty, the electric utility update.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. My report will be very, very short tonight, recognizing that we have a
Thank you.
relatively long agenda, and that completes my report for tonight. Thank you.
That's what I like to hear. All right. I hope you set a tone for the evening, Mr. Liberty. Not even a hint, that's an actual statement. Water utility update by Sam is heavy. Huh? And Miss Maliga has arrived. Thank you. Good evening.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm sorry, Sam, can you turn the mic on?
Sam Hetty, Utility Director, City of Lake Worth Beach. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council. I do have a few handouts. You know,
You're good at handouts.
Thank you.
All right. How about trivia? Water utility trivia.
this is for a little bit further down the list here, but so what we have ongoing, the utility update. We have the EPA is going to stop by the facility in October the 18th and 19th. The Environmental Protection Agency will be stopping by the water treatment facility. They'll do an annual inspection. The last time the facility had been inspected, I think, was almost 10 years ago. So they'll come in. It's always a good opportunity for all of us to learn new things that are going on in the industry. Also to learning opportunity for us. If they find something, maybe there's something that we can all learn from. So it's always a good opportunity. We're ramping up in all the projects that you guys were afforded us to approve the funding for. We were awarded the Outstanding Membrane Plant Award for 2022.
Of the whole state?
It's for the southeast region.
Congratulations.
Yes, that was very nice.
Good to have a good membrane.
Yes.
What is a membrane?
The membrane, the RO plant.
No.
The RO plant, the membrane is what is actually inside the RO vessel.
Mhm.
It's a very tightly
Talk.
wound fabric, if you would.
Right.
Keeps out all the pathogens.
Okay.
We actually have applied for an award for the water tower through Tenemic, the actual manufacturer who provided the paint. It's called Tenemic. It's actually spelled cement backwards because it's as hard as cement.
Really?
Yes. And we've applied for an award. They have a calendar, if you would, for different tanks that are painted with a Tenemic paint. So we've applied and see how that turns out for us.
So fun.
Yeah, that was. We're getting, I think we issued the South Palm Park NTP today. Was it today? Tomorrow, maybe? The notice to proceed. So they can get started on it, procuring all the materials that they need to procure for 18th Avenue South.
Oh, great.
Yes. I think our emails will slow down in at that point.
Wow.
Thursday, we're here, but the water plant staff, we have the best tasting water event that's happening down in Deerfield Beach. So we have an opportunity to showcase the facility and hopefully win the best drinking water contest. So that'll be awesome if that
That'd
happens.
be terrific.
We're doing a letter modification for well 17 and 18. We are close to the isochlor, which is a high concentration of salt water, but I think with some improved modeling that we've come up with, we should be able to apply for a different modification for that those two wells. Vaughn is managing the 4 and 5 FDOT projects that we have going on right now. It's crazy. It was a little bit sleepy with that DOT project. Now it's going crazy. It's 4 or 5 projects that are ongoing right now. What I've handed out were the grants that we have been awarded. A couple of them that's not on there. We were awarded the $1 million from the DEO, which is Department of Economic Opportunity. That's for the water treatment plant roof and some the clear well, top of the clear well as well. South Palm Park, it was a match for 300,000, so we put up 300,000. They put up 300,000 from the DEP. Eden Place, we put up 300. They put up 300. Parrot Cove, Florida Legislative and the DEP gave us $450,000, no match. 10th and 13th Avenue, 352,000 with a match. And then lead line service inventory, we were awarded $950,000 from the DEP on that. $465,000 of that is forgiven whenever we begin. But we have to come up with the money and then they forgive it at the end. Grants that we had applied for, Palm Beach County LMS, there's 5 portable generators that we applied for at the local mitigation strategy. 9th Avenue Pump Station, we're asking for $150,000 in grant because that's the design money up front. So we'll ask for more if we're awarded that. Parrot Cove, we're asking for an additional $250,000. The opinion of probable cost on that project is 1.2 million. And right now we only have 700,000. So we're asking for some more. Eden Place, we're asking for an additional $491,000 on Eden Place. Same issue. We get awarded some money. We need more money to complete the project. So that's what we're doing. The sub-regional update, the partners are finalizing the interlocal agreement. I'm hoping soon. We're working on the capital improvement plan for the sub-regional. We're replacing pumps and doing some manhole rehabs. Working on the PLC and control logic for the station. We're doing a water sampling event at Bryant Park to see if there's anything going on there. I was asked by one of the commissioners to ensure that the waters around Bryant Park were okay. So we're doing a sampling event to ensure that nothing's going on there.
You mean in the intercoastal or water that comes out of our water fountain?
And the intercoastal. And yes, sorry. The ECR update. I don't know if you were aware, we're managing almost $200 million in bonded money and operational and O&M money at the ECR.
What is the ECR?
It's the East Central Regional Wastewater Treatment Facility. It's where our wastewater from here and the sub-regional partners go to get treated. That's quite a bit. And we're 16.42% of that influent that goes there. So we're 3 out of 5, I guess.
You're a vocal member.
Yes, we are. Yes, I am. Absolutely am. They have 30 ongoing projects out there that we're helping manage. So it's kind of concludes my update of if you would. I did hand this out. If there was any questions about what we've kind of put together as a visual for you, I'm here to answer any questions.
Maybe we could get this on the website as part of the agenda.
Yes, absolutely.
No, I have no questions. Any other questions? No?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep, you're welcome.
You're very good at showing talent. You're good. We like showing
Some other
talent.
things in October.
Okay, great. Cool. Okay, now we have public participation of non-agenda items and consent agenda. Madam Clerk, do we have any blue clerk cards for you?
I have one gentleman, Mr. Lindsay, who wants to do his own comment. I'm gonna allow. Mr.
Okay.
Lindsay, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can. You please give your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Paul Lindsay, 1764 22nd Ave North, Lake Worth. Good evening. I'll be very brief with a statement. It sounds petty, owing the gentleman just now. I just had a question. I often have zero usage for my monthly water bill, and the service charges at zero usage are still approximately $40 to $43, almost split 50-50 between water service charges and sewer charges. So my question is, I certainly appreciate and understand there have to be standard service fees. I'm just curious if there's a process by which we might consider lower fees for zero usage months. And that's my full statement and question. Thank you.
Okay, we don't actually answer questions, but I think we're taking notes of your questions and we'll address them. Thank you. Is that it, Madam Clerk?
Yes, that's the only comment I have at all, Madam Mayor.
For, okay, I thought I saw 3 public comments regarding the apprenticeship program.
That's
on the
the
agenda.
28th. That's for the Thursday's meeting.
Oh, Thursday's meeting, that's right. So many meetings, and I have no blue cards up here, so let's have the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion? Motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. We didn't do additions, deletions, or reordering of the agenda. Are there any? So let's approve the agenda as stated. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, so the consent agenda, we did.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Unfinished business, purchase power cost adjustment update. It's the PCA update.
Good evening. Yeah, again, Ed Liberty, Electric Utility Director. I have with me Brian King from my staff that works very closely on the PCA together with the budget side and the finance department side. And we'll take you through the various examples for PCA. Let me open up my own book here.
I just want to say for the folks living out in listening to this, there was a really good explanation in the agenda item of the difference between the PCA and the different things. I was glad to get that. Thank you.
You're welcome. One of the first things to say to folks regarding the PCA, it's the power cost adjustment. It's the portion of the bill that gets adjusted to reflect what it actually costs us to buy power in wholesale markets, and we buy that power under long-term contracts that were competitively bid. And a big portion of that actually tracks the cost of natural gas, which is a major component for the purchased power that we have, other than nuclear, which is not part of the PCA. So natural gas is a relatively smaller component in our portfolio than it is for many utilities. That's one of the things that helps us have very competitive rates. So for those of us to look at our rates closely and compare them to other utilities, I believe that for the month of July, in the Florida Municipal Electric Association survey, we were ranked, I believe, 5th in the state, 5th lowest in the state for our electric rate for the 1,000 kilowatt hour customer. And if you compare us to the alternative across the street, we're about $30 or more per month cheaper right now. So we're in the on the right side of that. That doesn't take away anything from the pain that we all experienced last year when natural gas prices spiked, but they have since come down, and we've obviously, with the moves that you all made in May and June, brought those rates back down to reflect that savings. So
you just for.
Mr. Mayboy, please put your line in if you're going to.
What's that?
And I really do ask that we allow staff to finish their presentations. May I have questions?
Please. It's such an important thing, what you just said. Could you repeat it again? The cost difference between us and our We'll call him our neighbor.
Mhm. Yep.
Thank you.
Good question. But based on comparisons of actual bills, we have people that volunteered their bills from across the street, and we run those through our same billing model. It's roughly $30 or 30 some odd dollars per month cheaper right now for that 1,000 kilowatt hour customer here. And some people don't always believe it, but we take an actual bill and we run it through our billing model to say, what would we have billed? What's the check the customer would have had to write for that same amount of energy in our system? And it's roughly $30 a month cheaper.
Wonderful.
Took a long time to get there,
Yep.
but that's where we are. So in terms of PCA, we have a number of options, and we also have late news, right, which is where the September numbers come in. And just as a reminder for everybody, I should say not September, but the August numbers. The numbers for the month that precede this meeting, whenever these meetings happen, don't come in time for us to meet the schedule for the meeting. So we typically bring those in so you have an indication of what it's going to look like in the next true up. So Assistant Director Brian King will walk us through those. But using the prior true up period, we have three options for you to work from, and we can also do some live interpolation if you need us to. But if we were assuming that you would transfer 3.5 million to the PCA, we show those numbers with a PCA of $29.15. Now, when we see how the August numbers came in, you'll see that transferring 3.5 is not an option. We probably have to do less because the August numbers came in higher in terms of cost. Option 2 would involve a transfer to the stabilization fund of $2.5 million, if I remember correctly. And that would yield a PCA of $21.50. And option 3, if you were to go that far, it would be only a $500,000 transfer, and the PCA would then be $6.19. What we'll walk through tonight is where you would like that transfer to be. We think that a number of about $3 million is probably the correct number based on what we have in the balance, but we can certainly go through that and answer your questions and as you discuss this matter. Yeah, and Brian reminds me, we also have Craig Shepard from Leidos, our rates consultants, is on the line with us as well tonight.
Okay, great.
So
Is this, wait, let me just, is this a good place to stop and just ask a couple questions?
yes, it would
Okay.
be.
Well, I have lots of questions, but the one about what you just said is, should we be discussing the $3 million transfer during this part of the agenda or the rate stabilization, which is the next item?
During the next item. So they're kind of intertwined. We're not sure which one we want to talk about first, but we can certainly dovetail them and talk about both at the same time, because obviously the decision you make on the PCA is really going to determine how much you're going to transfer into the stabilization fund.
Okay,
They go hand in hand.
I know the last meeting I think we had consensus to take whatever our overage was at the time, maybe transfer like 3 million to the rate stabilization, and then the remainder we were going to use to start a storm fund. So we're saying like that's probably not an option now because of can we get the August numbers?
Yes. Okay. So what's the August balance right now? As of the end of August, what's the balance that we have in the PCA? 3.4 million is what we're showing as a balance in the PCA as of the end of August, which was not on the backup because these numbers just became available.
So in the month of August, we're thinking that we probably lost about 200,000, 170. What's the price difference? Okay, I'm not convinced right now with all the intertwining of the PCA and the transfer to the PCA or to the rate stabilization. I'm just worried that these options are not, I don't think each option is giving a clear picture of where we're at right now. So in option 1, we're keeping, if we say that we have a $3.6 million overage and we only transfer 3.5, it's telling us that we're keeping $100,000 with us. to kind of lower costs a little bit. And then in option 2, if we transfer only the 2.5 over, we're keeping $1.1 million with us to lower our rates down to 2150. Because the difference between B and C is over $1 million. It's saying, let's not transfer all of our money to rate stabilization. Let's keep back $1.1 million to drive down lower rates. So I definitely don't feel comfortable with options 2 or 3 because I think I don't want to continue to undercharge or undercollect our customers. So right now it seems like we're already on a trend to undercollect. If we look at what happened and we were over collecting and then in trying to pull up when we were in June was the first time. Oh yeah, do you want to pull up the backup?
Could you pull up the red and blue graphs? I think that would help us.
If the clerk could put up on the screen, I believe it's page 81 of the backup.
Pretty close to Disney.
Give me just a second.
So just, and then looking at the table, I guess the graph is with it too. It shows like June is when we had our big rate decrease and we over collected like 200,000. Then in July, we under collected 200,000. And then now we're here in August, under collecting 200,000 again. So unless we really think that rates, what we're paying for power is going to go down in the foreseeable future, I don't feel comfortable with the rate decrease right now because that rate decrease would be basically doing what we said we didn't want to do, where we're taking from the reserves to drive down our rates. And nobody up here said they wanted to do that. If we're paying $30 a megawatt hour, we want to charge 30 megawatt an hour. I'm concerned about a rate decrease happening in December, us continuing to lose more money through the winter months, then sliding into the summer and having to overcorrect that. So with this, I was already a little nervous. I'm like, oh, we only have 2 months of data since our last rate decrease. That's like not a lot of data to know if we're like in that right range, because our goal is to hit that revenues and expenses are equal. Okay, so you can, look at this graph. So in June, we were in the black 200 something. July, June, we were in the, so all this stuff, May and above, $900,000 surplus, 1.3 million surplus, all that stuff is in these numbers. But those were the surpluses we wanted to create that stabilization fund. And those were all when the rates were like $55 a megawatt hour. But since we've reduced them to 33 megawatt hour an hour, June over by 288, July under by 295, August under by 175. So even if we keep the rates the same right now, I'm guessing September, October, November, we might be under. So I don't know why we would lower it.
Yeah, would you like to respond to that?
A very good observation. And one of the things to keep in mind, or a couple of things to keep in mind, is that the PCA expenses shown are for the month in which the power was bought, meaning that we bought that power at wholesale in that month, and that's the corresponding expense for that month. The PCA revenue side is when the revenue actually came in from the customers. And we know that revenue typically lags 30 to 60 days behind when the expense was incurred, because it depends on when that customer's meter read cycle is. So for example, a customer whose meter is read around May 2nd, then it gets a bill, or I think around May 11 or 15, somewhere in there, and then has 30 some odd days to pay the bill. And not everybody pays on time. So the actual cash coming in doesn't match the date of incurrence of the expense. So there's always going to be a little bit of a lag there. Yeah. Generally speaking, natural gas prices have been trending upward. And there is another item, I believe, in the backup, a few more pages down, which you should have, which shows what the natural gas prices have actually been doing relative to what we projected. And the other thing to keep in mind, there it is there, and it's over to the right, and it's hidden. Let me see if I can.
Is that better? Can you see it now?
Much better. Thank you. So you can see in the forecasted column, that's the number that was forecasted. And in the actual column, you can see what the gas price actually came in at. So gas prices are trending up. And then we did that again for tonight's exercise. And I think the August numbers came in up around $4, right, Brian? Yeah, up around $4. So gas prices have been trending upwards. And it was taking place at a time, the months of May, June, July, August, and September are the big months in terms of load. The load goes up dramatically and then it'll start to come down. So our sale of power is going to be decreasing in the coming months as we get past the hottest part of the year. But gas prices seem to be going up a little bit. I looked at the futures about 2 hours ago. They seem to have come off a little bit, but the futures are not always a perfect indicator of what's going to happen in a given day. So what does all that boil down to? These numbers move around in a band. And when it finally shows up in our revenues, could be 1 or 2 months after we've incurred the expense. So if you try to manage this too tightly, you're going to be making big adjustments, each month or each quarter. So that would argue towards a smaller transfer to the stabilization fund, perhaps the $2.5 million number, just a thought, which to still give you some room to wiggle up and down. And then you can continue to monitor that. We give you those reports each month so you have an idea of where we're at.
So with that smaller transfer, that's option 2. The
That's-
smaller transfer.
That's correct. We were trying to give you a range of options, knowing that you wouldn't pick a specific one, but just give you a range for discussion.
Right. So if we chose option 2 and we set the rates at 2150, we're already paying about 30 megawatt hours ish. We're charging our customers 33.43. That is our current rate, 33.43. And even at charging 33.43, we'll see some extra revenues come in, sure, but we're not going to see like a big upswing. I don't think. It went from negative 295 to plus 500,000. So I don't think undercharging our customers like $10 a megawatt hour, if we think we're purchasing it at 30 a megawatt hour, makes sense. Even that makes me really nervous. I think we're going to blow through all our reserves if we lower the rates.
And what's your response to that?
Well, if you were to transfer the 2.5 million, and right now there's, at least at the time of this report, there was 3.6, and we'll rerun that number with the 3.4 million. But that $11 reduction it wants to pay back the difference between the 3.6 million and the 2.5 million that you would move into the rate stabilization fund. It's going to try to pay back that $1.1 million over the next 3 months. That's what that $11 reduction is you're saying, okay, we'll move 2.5 into the rate stabilization fund. I still have an excess of, by the time this was printed, 1.1 million.
Right.
And that $11 is going to try to pay back that 1.1 million over the next 3 months.
So
next time we come back and look at it.
We'd be moving $2.5 million to our reserves, and we would be spreading the other 1.1 to make our rates lower in the winter months. It will not last past those months. It probably won't even last, but we think it is because our purchase costs are trending upward. And then we'll be back here raising rates again.
Well, you would have that fund to be able to.
Right. We have the fund regardless. If we get the 3 million or 2.5 million, I don't feel comfortable lowering our rates to lower than what we know we're paying for the power. Like, according to my calculations, we are predicting $29.97 a megawatt hour. If you divide A by D, that's how much we think we're paying for power and how much power we think we're going to sell. You get $29.97. We think we're going to be purchasing power for $30 a megawatt hour. I don't feel comfortable using our reserves to charge our customers less than what we think we're going to be paying for it. But I'll let other people ask some questions.
Mr. McBoy?
Could we pull up, I believe it's the next page, the graphs, the red and blue. Maybe it's previously, on mine it's 79, and Ed's I think it's 81. Yeah, there you go. That one, and we see both of the graphs. There's two areas to go from. So, and it would be wonderful if on the fly you could estimate what the August numbers look like on the upper graph, not so much in the lower one, but I don't know if you can guess where they are. I'm not sure I could
Say, Brian, do you have the ability to quickly run the model to reproduce that with the August numbers?
but I think what we've heard verbally is, yeah, you could, it might be possible. verbally, what I'm seeing in the upper graph is that, the blue, the revenues are, they're holding reasonably constant, came down a little bit. But the orange in the last month went up some, which is consistent with the gas price going. And what I'm seeing in the bottom graph is the last, say, 4 months, the blue and the red, the revenues and the expenses are running very parallel.
Converging.
Yeah, well, they're not converging, but they're running parallel. They would converge if we did something different, but they're running parallel. But our revenue, our cumulative revenues is a bit higher. So we've got some, and that certainly argues that, well, we could move some of that difference, squeeze those guys back together by shifting it over in the rate stabilization. Question, how much? But looking at the top graph, the trend indication based on 1 month, not much of the trend, better than nothing, says our expenses are going to go up. And with that logic, I would tend to agree with Commissioner Stokes' one. I don't think we should be lowering the PCA. I think we have some spare to move a little bit in the rate fund, but it wouldn't make a lot of sense to move it over in the rate stabilization this month and then pull it back out next month. I would rather keep the rate, since the trend looks like it's going up, we may have to dip into that anyhow. If we don't want to raise it again.
And currently it's 33 something.
Look at the sheet here, currently 33.43. I think that's,
lower.
that's a,
And
That's a-
certainly correct me if I'm missing something.
no, I think you're looking at the data correctly, Vice Mayor, and Commissioner Stokes is as well. There's certainly, time is not of the essence to make a change. So what we have going, and the public should know this, is that this is very transparent. Whether you actually transfer this money into the stabilization fund or leave it where it's at, it's not like it's going to disappear, right?
Right.
It's not going to be used for something else. It's being tracked and accounted for and looked very closely at by a number of people every month. So we are on the other side of the equation, or to that benefit as well, we are in a very competitive position. When you look at the rates that were published by FMEA, statewide comparisons for the month of July, we're very competitive for that 1,000 kilowatt hour customer compared to all utilities in the state. I think we were down, I want to say number 5, number 6, we're very, very low. So we're in a good place to be. And we've got, even if you could look at the end of August, roughly $3.4 million, we believe in excess. So there's no pressing problem that we're trying to solve right now, other than, we want to satisfy your desire to create a stabilization fund and put some money.
To better our position. sort of
Right. The
proactive.
money's there, whether we keep it in
Bucket one or bucket.
in bucket 1 or bucket 2. Either way, the money's being tracked, very closely reported to you monthly in a very transparent fashion.
So,
I guess my proposal would be don't change the PCA rate, leave it at the 33. Certainly don't lower it because it looks like it's going to go up, or our costs are going to go up. But do transfer, and I wouldn't do the 3 million, the full. I might be okay with 2.5 million. Seems-
That's next.
But that's, yeah.
okay, so just so that, again, I'm not the math girl here. My deference to you. It's currently 33 and change. So what like option 1 would just bring it down $4, 33 to 29. So we're not talking about a big decrease in the rate to the customer, correct? On either of on the third one, yeah, it's a big thing, but so if we keep it at 33, we're continuing to build up our reserves, our hopefully start the storm fund. Is there other than making people feel good that we've lowered the rates, is there a real reason to make it go below what we're paying now, 33 and change?
My opinion,
No, well, I'm asking you.
yeah,
You're our, yeah.
no, we're already very, very low. We're amongst the lowest electric rates in the state. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't people that are struggling even to pay that bill,
But
right? But the reality is that the 3.5 doesn't exist anymore because that number goes away when we update with the actual August. So the 3.5 drops to 3.4. 3.4. So you couldn't transfer 3.5 right now if you wanted to. You'd have to
Right.
transfer, let's say 3 or less.
Right.
I think it's certainly, and part of the benefit of this process, which you've instituted, is to look at this every month and have this discussion. So you can certainly talk about this again next month. We're not going away. We'll bring you the next update and you can make the decision again. Nothing bad happens to our customers. Again, not taking away from the fact that, you know, $2, $3, or $4 a month is real money to some people that are struggling. But
But to the majority of people, it's $3 or $4.
it's $3 or $4, and the money is a credit to them. It's still their money in this account, right? It's still a public money, and when it's appropriate, you can lower the rate. Or as the costs go up, we're going to see the 3.4 erode slightly, likely in the coming months. So we're able, fortunately, to be in a position where as those costs go up, we don't have to go back to our customers and say, oops, we need to raise your rate right now.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Ms. Malega? Oh, Mr. Diaz.
Looking forward to talking about this further down in the agenda, but I guess in the meantime, I think you just said two super important things, which I think is based on, is really like, you know, inspiring my decision, if you will. And the number one thing is we're in a good position rate wise. That's good, clearly super beneficial. And the other thing, which kind of is a little bit of reading in between the lines, but you know, let's think about what drove that increase in July. And it's hot, right? And obviously demand goes up. And there was a significant increase, but it wasn't quite as bad as previous, you know, looking at how it looks like outside. And it seems like kind of what we're banking on is this winter might also not be as bad. So we might as well keep hoarding those chestnuts, if you will, because next year, when we might have a worse situation where we truly want to dip into this. And so, you know, to me, it's pretty logical. It's like, it's
To keep it where it is.
this year
Yeah.
we've that Saharan dust, whatever it was that kept us like really mild and protected, like it just saved us really, this entire country, on a lot of things. Maybe not everyone obviously, but and hopefully, you know, this winter it's kind of similar where we'll be in a good position where we can continue to save and you know, as you build a resilient grid and infrastructure, we should also build a resilient financial structure. And I think we should keep moving in that direction.
Thank you. Ms. Malega.
Thank you, ma'am. So I'm hearing what all my colleagues are saying, but I'm looking at this as a whole, and in a couple items from now, we're gonna be talking about a 3.25% increase for the water bill. And we'll be talking about $3.98 increase to the electric bill. So to me, those are two increases that are gonna impact our residents. I am in favor of looking at this as a whole because it is the electric utility meeting and saying, okay, knowing that those items are coming after this, my analysis is that I would prefer to do option one, which would give a $4.28 break to our residents, knowing that in a few minutes from now, we're going to be voting about increasing things. So even though it's only $4.28, that offset of the $3.98 increase just from the base rate is a 30-cent savings after it nets out. So I'm in favor of option one because I know that what's coming down the road on an increase. So I would like to go with option one. Not the full 3.5, obviously, but doing 3 million and saying what we could do, or even 2.9, because again, this is a bigger picture. This isn't just let's solve this. There's 3 more coming behind it. So I don't know what the rest of the colleagues feel, but I would like to figure out how we can do some kind of decrease to offset the increases that are now going to be voted on in a few minutes.
Thank you, Mr. McBoy. Oh, Ms. Lehman.
I would love to give a decrease right now. My biggest concern is that it is not sustainable and that we are excited and we give a $4 decrease today. And so any decrease will help our customers and it will help them in December when their bill is already the lowest, January, February, where their bills are already lower than any other time of the year. And as we're doing that, we're dipping into our reserves. We are not continuing to, if we keep rates the same where they are right now, I'm looking down the road and I don't see us continuing to save. I see us even keeping rates the way they are right now, continuing to pull from our safety net and to decrease them even further and pull from that faster, then where are our customers in the summer months when they still have the other sewer and water and everything else that they're paying? And then we have to raise the rates even higher than.
When you
the
say raise,
initial
do you
one.
mean the base rate, PCA, or all of it together?
All of it together, but I really think the PCA, all of the rates that we're going to approve later on tonight are going to be for the year, right? The PCA is the only one that goes up and down. So I'm just afraid that if we lower them tonight, it will offset the base rate increase for a little while, but then we're going to burn through our reserves because we're already seeing that we're under collecting already. So what's going to happen over the next few months? We're going to take our winter months that are the kindest to our electric customers, absolutely the kindest, and we're going to use up our reserves in the winter months. And then coming into the summer months, we're going to say, oh gosh, we just used up, $1 million over 6 months in our
I
rate.
kind of hear what you're saying, but I'm thinking of the snowbirds that are coming back, so we're gonna have an increase in usage there. It is Christmas, we have Deco Green coming out, so I'm thinking about like, what else is coming in the coming months? So I think that our usage, even though, like you said, it's hot, we might offset. I don't know, I'm just trying to be optimistic.
I think if we pay $33 for a megawatt, the more people that we undersell it to is worse for us. Because if we pay $33 a megawatt and we're turning around and selling it for 30, every megawatt we sell, we're losing $3 on every single one. And it just adds up and it adds up. And I just don't see, the upside of saving that money in the winter months and then depleting the reserves. And then, and that's right now, if our rates stay the same, and if our costs stay the same, we're pulling from our reserves. But costs are going up. Costs are trending up. So we're already going to be pulling from our reserves even more. So to lower, what I recommend is coming back in November. I was looking at kind of the awkwardness that we have with, like, we're in September, we're not really aligned to quarters. Like, there are quarterly reports, but like, I would like to see us say fiscal year 24 starts in October. So in October, November, December, we will come back in November and we're going to start aligning everything to quarters. We'll look at the previous quarter as a quarter, and we'll look at the quarter that we're in, and we'll forecast to the next quarter. And then when we come back every cycle, we can compare our actuals to our forecasts, because right now nothing matches up. So I would personally really, and then if we're in November, we'll have 4 months of data. And we'll see, are we trending down? Are we trending up? Like, have we overcorrected? So I would like to wait until November to consider a rate decrease till we have more data.
But if we just on dates, if we're going to the quarterly based on the fiscal year, it would be December, not November.
We would be, because right now we kind of do this thing where we're in October or we're in September, but we're looking at September and October and November.
Okay.
So like it's weird. Trust me.
You just don't like the symmetry.
I chart, and I think if we come in the middle month of each quarter, look at the previous quarter, which we can do because we're on a 2-month lag. So by coming in the middle month, we can look at the previous quarter, we can forecast kind of where are we right now in this quarter, look ahead, because what we're not doing, these rates take place in December, and we have no forecast for what's coming December, January, and February, what we think the energy prices are going to be. This forecast is based on the energy prices for September, October, and November.
And they're going up.
And they're going up, and we have no forecast. And the rates don't take place until December, and we're not even looking ahead. So I would like to, I know we've talked about trying to restructure some of the way that this is done, and kind of, we started it once a long time ago, and we haven't changed the way our process at all. So I think October, we should be nailing down our process, and then November, we should be looking at.
Okay, I'm getting nervous by the time. Madam Clerk, where are we? Because we have to do this tonight. This is budget stuff. We can't really.
We've
No,
got
this-
5 minutes and 44 seconds left.
Okay, then I think we've all had our say in different things. I know you have your lighter, Mr. McBoy. Give me a minute, because we have 3 minutes and I don't want to go to a workshop. So
No, I'm not
please.
gonna go to work.
Well, we'll have to go to workshop if we go past 30 minutes.
Oh, I'm not gonna talk for 5 minutes.
Well, then please get started and Go ahead.
I hear Commissioner Malega on the argument that we should look at the whole, the water, the electric, the base rate and the PCA. However, and I hear your optimism that we're going to have more usage because Snowbirds come back and Becker Green is getting built and all those things. Remember on the second point, the PCA is a pass-through.
Vice Mayor, can you speak into your mic? I apologize.
Thank you. The PCA is different than the base rate. PCA is a pass-through. So in theory, if we've got it set right, if you use more, we buy more. You don't gain much, you shouldn't gain anything by having more customers. That's the purpose of the PCA. It's just to pay for the fuel.
Okay,
Base rate is different.
yes,
I think it's important to keep those two, the logic of why we bother to separate. The base rate increase is because there are other expenses that relate to keeping the system going, the transmission distribution.
okay, Mr. McVoy, thank you so much.
Please do not interrupt me.
I'm actually ending you because we are going to, Mr. McVoy, I
You're
think,
interrupting me, man.
I'm not stopping you.
It's down.
Mr. McVoy, you're telling her things I think that she understands the difference between base and that. So I don't want to go to a workshop. Where are we with time, ma'am?
Madam Mayor,
Where are we with time, ma'am?
if you do not.
4 minutes and 2 seconds, Madam Mayor.
4 minutes left?
Yes.
All right, 2 minutes, Mr.
I would like
McVoy.
to make it very clear that the information we have at this point is that the expenses with PCA look like they're trending upward. That to me says it doesn't make a lot of sense to lower the PCA. We have no information that says it's going to get cheaper. It might, but we have no indication that. The indication is going to get more expensive. So it doesn't make sense. And remember, these options, if I understand correctly, there's nothing fixed in stone. The option, you could make as many options as you want. You know, we could do whatever we want. I would strongly suggest that we don't lower the PCA at this point because we can see that it's likely to cost us money. And then in our next discussion, I think we can do a certain transfer for the rate stabilization.
Thank you.
I'm very well aware that PCA.
Yeah,
pays for
Really, we don't need a
the
lecture.
education, but I'm looking at the people who look at their bill as a whole.
Okay, now are we taking action on this item? Is this an action item that we're going to vote on right now?
So I would make a motion
Okay.
that we hold the PCA at its
Yes.
current level.
Are we making a,
I believe, Madam Mayor, that normally on the PCA, you make a motion to give direction to staff, but we do it by motion, so it's clear.
okay, so Mr. McVoy's made a motion. Is there a second?
Second,
And this is a motion to keep the PCA as it is.
At the current.
At current rate, that's what I just said, as it is. Thank you. All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Aye against?
Nay.
Okay, that's 4-1. Next up. And my reason behind that is it's the one movable thing that we can talk about. All right, next up is resolution 31-2023, establishment of an electric utility rate stabilization fund.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Commissioners. For the record, Yana Gendahayo, Interim Finance Director. So we're coming back with this resolution. I believe we work with the attorney to address your comments from the last meeting. More specifically in section 3 of the resolution. We had initially anticipated 3.5, but with the updated excess PCA numbers, which I was hoping they would provide like next month or something. So we'll just have to determine what the amount that we're going to transfer.
Okay, Ms. Malega?
Being that the vote just went the way that it did, and we have 3.4 million, this fund to me is very important, and I think if we just keep talking about it and kicking the can down the road, I understand that some people think it's just a pot of money that can get moved from one to the other. But this is more of a policy that's being set forth,
Yes.
and I think that that's the big picture. So I would like to make a motion to set aside $500,000 to physically start the rate stabilization fund
As opposed to 3 million?
as opposed to 3 million.
Do I have a second? Motion dies for lack of second. Is there another motion?
I would make a motion to transfer 2.5 million,
Is there a second?
but I'm open.
Is there a second
Guess we have to have a conversation.
for 2.5? Well, we have to motion and something has to happen. Motion for 2.5.
Second.
Okay, second for discussion. Okay, yeah, of course, that's understood.
I'm sorry, who made the second?
Ms. Malega, and that's just procedure. Ms. Stokes, and let's really keep it on the time, folks. We have a lot to go over tonight. It's already 7 o'clock. We have half an hour maximum for each one. I say that to everyone. Ms. Stokes?
I really believe that we should be transferring the full amount of what is over to rate stabilization. I think we need to pick a cutoff date. What makes sense to me? Well, now with this new information, I think we need to pick a month, cut it off, just cut it off.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Like July, how much money do we have over under in July? Cut it off. Transfer everything over to rate stabilization unless we decided we wanted to save any for the storm fund like we all said we wanted to. But now that we know we're already starting to lose money, I don't know if we want to reconsider that. But if we chose an amount like 250,000, for example, I'm not married to an amount, set that aside for the storm fund, everything else by the end of July, whatever excess goes in the rate stabilization fund. And the whole point of that is that you pull and put into it on a regular basis. So I think when we just leave it hanging out like we are right now, that's what makes these options come back that look like $6 a megawatt hour is a viable option. It's not. But as long as we have money that we're not just moving over to that fund, it makes us look like we should be considering taking that excess and using it to lower, rates artificially. So I want to get all of it over there at the end of that month, if it's July. Then when we come back and talk about what is our true amount that starts in August, because we had some initial amount that started the fund that made us straight for the end of July. And then when we come back to revisit it, okay, in August, September, October, what happens? Were we lower? Were we higher? Do we need to transfer the overage into the fund? Do we need to pull from the fund to cover the underage? And stop having it just floating around. So I just want something nice and clean.
I'm not sure that it is floating around.
It's just,
Well, let's ask her.
we're seeing it as options to use to like lower rates for 3 months. So take 1.1 million and distribute it for 3 months.
Let me ask a question. We were in the position recently of having to raise the rates because the rates had been lowered and it sucked away a lot of the reserves, correct? I mean, that's the position that we were sort of left with.
Correct, back in 2022, yes.
Right. So we did what we had to do to correct that. We don't want to have that happen again. So if what you're saying is, I don't want to lower rates because it'll be artificial and we'll be sucking out our reserves to keep this artificially low rate.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand.
That's absolutely, thank you. Thank you for restating for clarity.
Like, I'm thinking electric rates for idiots is kind of where I come from. Okay, so Ms. Malega? Oh, sorry.
Mr. Diaz first.
Oh,
Thank you. Mine was relatively simple. I mean, when we had this conversation with Stantec, or it's a related conversation, I thought we did talk about, he had suggested a $4 million cap. And, I think that is something to discuss. And I definitely fall in the same camp of, we should move the money. I don't think we can do all 3.5. You just said we have 3.4, right?
Right.
So
say that again?
we can't do the full 3.5 because we have 3.4. So, so it's not technically the full 3.5, but I think we should, start officially saving it. Yeah, it's moving from one bucket to the next, but it needs to be, committed.
Right. We don't want any disappearing.
Yeah, and I look at that table that we showed previously. I'm not, you look at that July and August of 2022, and I'm not confident that that's not, that is a one-time thing. I think that's going to be a fairly regular thing we're going to be dealing with from now until the rest of human history. It might not be every year, but it's going to be much more regular. When you look at the table of the PCA expenses and you look,
They're going to go up.
from June to July is exponential, is a massive increase. And I think those kinds of situations are just going to be more frequent. So we need to be prepared, and this year it's been fairly mild and we've been pretty lucky, and hopefully that momentum carries through. So let's use the opportunity to save and protect ourselves.
Thank you, Ms. Malega.
Thank you. So if I'm hearing from my colleagues, right? I think that ultimately, if we can set up. We haven't gotten our bill yet, so we know that 3.4 could turn to 3.1 or 3.2 or whatever. So we don't want to suck up, in my opinion, if I had that money sitting in reserves. I wouldn't want to transfer the full amount, just in case the bill does come in short, then you just have to do the transfer. I also think that this is a good time for us to set aside $250,000 or $300,000 and say that's gonna be for the storm fund, so out of 3.4. Keep $200,000 for the if come maybe for September. Put 250 in storm and then put the rest in the stabilization fund. I would be okay with doing something like that.
I would be willing to amend my motion to be essentially exactly that.
And I would actually say, not 200,000, but 500,000. I'd say if we're gonna have a storm fund, it should be something that could actually be meaningful to start out with. So along those lines, I would go 2 and 500,000, 2 to the state.
So then that would give you
Wow.
900,000 just sitting in reserves over there, then we did that. For the maybe, so we'd have to do more than that, a bigger transfer, right?
I mean,
500 to storm and 2.5 to rate stabilization.
Okay.
And that leaves 400,000 in backup. money.
okay. So for the next meeting, we'll come back with a resolution to establish a storm fund
Mhm.
with
This is that,
storm fund.
Yeah.
This is a rate stabilization fund.
Really confused.
So
Yeah,
for
we
the-
want, I think
That
we,
was on here.
we do,
No.
No, we never.
we do, it's
So
clear
I
that
just
we
think
do
that
want to have.
when
a
we have
storm.
this opportunity with this money
Yeah.
sitting there. and
So
we
for the
want to
next,
Establish policy.
Right.
I think that would be a great
and
opportunity.
I don't think we need to be, it needs to be a utility meeting for the storm fund. Does it?
Okay.
We
It
can
could, it could be a regular, it could be a regular meeting just to set up the storm fund and then have those funds transferred.
I see you wanted to say something, Mr. O'Brien.
So following on that thought, you could tonight, if you wanted to vote to move 2.5 to stabilization fund, but, and then also vote on a motion and look to the parliamentarian to
create
confirm
storm fund.
that a storm fund be created with the intent of moving 500,000. You would approve that at a future meeting.
Right.
Yep.
And Madam Council, did I get that correct?
I think, yeah.
So do we need to amend our motion?
Yeah, but we have some more comments, Mr. Diaz.
I think that kind of covers it, because I was just gonna point out that's a pretty big change from what is before us, and I think that would be too much. So that was all I was pointing out, because, you know, the resolution that we have in front of us is really particular that this money is strictly for mitigating costs of PCA.
So we're saying 2 million
2.5, yes.
rather than 3. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you want to amend the motion? Oh, yes, you're good.
Can you explain to me the difference between having, pretend we have like the numbers in today, like we have $3.4 million
Yes.
in. Are we, and we say, take 0.5, put it in storm, take the full 2.9 and put it into, rate stabilization. If we don't do that and we say, actually, we only want to put 2.5 into rate stabilization and hold another 400,000 back for reserves, what I'm getting confused about isn't the rate stabilization our reserves? What is the benefits of holding back that 400,000?
Well, the 400,000 that we're trying to hold back is if we get a PCA deficit, it will offset that 400,000 will offset whatever deficit we're going to be facing in the next coming months.
Without doing a transfer from.
Right, without doing a transfer from the rate stabilization fund.
Say, do we have to pick a number tonight? I don't like
I
understand.
think we do.
Well, because it's got to come before us if they need to transfer the money. So by leaving the
Correct.
400,000, it kind of is like a housekeeping.
It gives them
There.
a little cushion because
Yes.
as you see
For us.
for the past 2 months, August and July, it's been like 400,000 deficit in total. So I think we're anticipating, the same results for September and maybe October.
So we're just going to use up that 400,000.
That 400 is just going to offset that variance.
Having like negative true ups in the upcoming months. We're going to whittle down that 400,000 before we say, let's pull from.
Right. And
Right, so-
as far as the cash flow is concerned for operation, we could still continue at a deficit until when we get to maybe let's say $500,000 deficit, then we could revisit the to see if we need to transfer from the rate stabilization fund before we increase any rates.
I think to that point, if I add to that, the difference is right now, let's say there's 3.4 in here right now. That 3.4 is unrestricted and it's considered working capital. Once you move a portion of that to the stabilization fund, it becomes restricted and it's no longer counting in our working capital number. And you'll want to watch that very closely. It means it's the equivalent of the lockbox. It can't be moved without coming back to you with specific approval. So we would still have a little bit of a cushion, but it's at some point if we need to, and we'll be reporting on these numbers monthly, and you'll see them. We're getting closer, not closer. You can make that decision. The big deal won't come until the end of the year when you go to close the books and close the year, how much you have in working capital, how much is restricted, because your working capital does not include restricted money.
Right.
This is my concern is that I don't want to give unclear direction. I'm not interested in keeping 400,000 for like working capital. I thought we were gonna, 500,000 for storm funds, and then everything else goes towards rate stabilization. Now, when the time comes to transfer that over, we don't know how much that will be exactly. So if that 400,000 that we're holding back tonight is just so that when we come back in October, we have enough, but not just to kind of keep as this loosey-goosey thing that's.
Your option could also work where we transfer everything to the PCA, but for the next meeting, you're just going to see our deficit and we'll just continue working on that deficit. And if we feel once we get to a certain deficit of the PCA, then we could say, okay, maybe it's time to transfer a little bit from the rate stabilization fund back to the electric fund.
Okay, I'm okay with
So
this, but I just.
We'll say what division of numbers you're comfortable with, how much to leave in, how much to move to the how much to.
Vice Mayor, your mic.
Yeah, I'm talking to you.
Can you just, because what we need to get to is
Right.
the three numbers. Do we leave, is it zero that we leave in where it is now and move everything to a combination of rate stabilization and storm? Or do we leave some number in and move a bit less to those two other things?
I'm fine just to keep things moving along, doing the 500,000, if that's what we all agree to for the storm.
2.25, 2.5.
And then 2.5 for the initial transfer in to the rate stabilization. And then we'll see where we're at when we come back, but I'm uncomfortable with.
I trust staff. I'm comfortable with the 400,000 because if we're short $200,000, then there's that you have the cushion there to pay it, and we'll see the numbers next month and go, okay, good thing we left it there. Now we're down to 220.
Okay,
You know,
Mr. Diaz, a final statement.
Great, because I don't know how much time we have left, but do we want to talk about cap as well? Do we want to add that in?
I think it's in here.
It's in here, 20% cap.
20% of the expected annual PCA expense. So we have a cap.
Okay, so, and we were, because, like I brought up, it was mentioned like the 4 million, but we're sticking to the percentage.
I think for now, until we see, we can always change it later.
Yeah,
The numbers I have are that 10% is. Where did I have this?
1.7 something.
Yeah, so our projected PCA revenues for the upcoming fiscal year is
17 some change.
17 million. So
Yes.
10% is 1.7.
So
And then and 25 gets us to 4.3. So, and it's a range that we want to be in. Hopefully we stay in the middle. We
It's
go,
growth.
we go down.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the
Yeah.
current motion is being amended to Mr. McBoy.
You're putting a lot of responsibility on to remember everything, but I think,
2.5 and 5.
Yeah.
Okay,
and I
Second.
guess the 5 is an indication that we'll need a.
Setting us-
resolution. This is the next
Yes.
meeting. the 10th.
Right.
Okay.
and it's seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Let's move on. Resolution 43-2023. Establishing the rates and charges for the electric utility for fiscal year 2024.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Any conversation? All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Thank you. I'm sorry, yeah, that's unanimous. Aye. Next one, resolution 44-2023, establish the rates and charges for the water system for fiscal year 2023 to 2024. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 45, 2023, establishing the rates, fees, and changes for the city's sub-regional sewer system. Do I have a motion?
Motion approved.
Do I have a second?
That's
All in favor?
Aye.
I apologize. Who was the second?
Diaz.
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 46 2023, establishing the rates and charges for the local sewer system. Do I have a motion?
Motion approved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, okay. This is an agreement with Encope Inc. for the renovation of the men's room, the employee lounge, small ladies room, supplies room, and for construction of the line ready room at the 1900 Second Avenue North Building. Who's going up there? She is. Hi, good evening.
Good evening, Valentina Sestera, Assistant Finance Director for Purchasing. Here for you tonight, we have the agreement with Encop Inc. for the renovation of men's room, employee lounge, ladies room, suppliers room, and the construction of the linesman ready room and the 1900 buildings. We have went out for a bid, received the 4 bids, and we are recommending award to the lowest bidder for the total amount of $242,467.30. This cost includes some contingency, and we have the project management team has made some changes in the scope, so we reduced some costs from the original bid price and added some contingency.
And it's $17,382.12.
That's a-
Yes.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Ratification of purchases from New Cat Corporation under work orders number 61 and 73. Do I have a motion?
Motion to
Well,
approve.
Is this a motion? Yeah, this is a motion to approve the, yes. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Oh,
What? I'm sorry?
Like,
Yeah, but like,
Oh, yeah, okay, Mr. McGuire.
if I understand this right, the way probably any utility, electric or otherwise, but probably especially true of electric utilities, stuff happens. You need to fix something on short notice. And you don't have time to go through a lot of paperwork and whatnot. It's just got to be fixed now or there are consequences. And I don't know what the proper name for that is, but you call them generally emergencies.
Mhm.
And I would imagine that in general, because this is something that would occur to any electric utility, there's presumably a sort of fix-up process that you do what you need to do. If you got to bring a contractor in, you have a standing contract or something, you call them up and say, hey, can you come fix whatever? And they say, sure. And we'll sort out the invoices and costs and approvals and all that stuff later when the emergency is dealt with. I would assume that that's the kind of situation that applies here. And I think from what we saw in the backup, that explicitly applied to, of these, I think it's 12 or 13 work orders, that applied to maybe a large half of them. Some of the others were not so much emergency, but stuff that also needed to be done for various reasons. I have zero problem with the idea of that emergencies happen and you got to just deal with them and we'll sort out the money later. I got no problem with that. What I'm puzzled by is, did we have a procedure in place that's the follow-up procedure? What's, we fixed the problem, guy came in, cost us some money, and now we do X to get it straightened out financially. Did we have, because these work orders go back to, I believe it was sometime in 2022. And I'm curious, just how did it come about that we didn't just do the emergency, fix the thing, get it, do the follow-up paperwork, and then we're done. And we don't have to accumulate 12, 13 of these things coming to us now. And it's not an insignificant amount of money. It's $400,000+. So I need to understand a little bit better. How did we get to where we are now?
Yeah, I want to have a comment. It's a good question. I think a lot of it is, I think what's happened, apparently something messed up. Sometimes in an organization of 450 people with an electric utility, water utility, sewer utility, golf course, something happened. This person, this employee just didn't do the right thing. There's no indication that he was taking money to go on his trip to Brazil. It was just an oversight and it was a mistake. What I'm interested in, and I think your question is a good one, where was there a procedure? Whether there was or not, there may have been a procedure, but this person didn't follow it. Sometimes these things happen. My biggest concern, and I'm satisfied, and we've all had the opportunity to speak with the city manager and Mr. Liberty about this, is the corrective action. And I think number one, what I was impressed with is that the electric utility found the problem, reported the problem to the city manager, and the city manager took absolute steps to fix it, to correct that this wouldn't happen again. And I'm going to ask her to explain what she did for the corrective action. I see your light is on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Vice Mayor, for your question. As mentioned, this is certainly a procedure, a process situation. As you know, we do have procurement procedures. And so in this case, we had a number of work orders or work activities that were required, and some were in association with some emergency situations. And purchase orders were not ordered, which is the procedure. So what we did to take corrective action was to, one, train to ensure that everyone's familiar with it. As you know, we have turnover of employees from time to time. And so we have to refresh them in the procurement procedures. So from my understanding that the department did refresh the memory or refresh the staff with what the procurement procedures are. We also had a citywide procedure training as well, because as mentioned, not just with the electric utilities, we have to also retrain and also train new employees who can come on at a certain time. And then with that, after that, we also put in a corrective action plan so that the procedure is formalized within the department. And in addition to that, we also submitted this information to the Palm Beach County Auditor, because in this case, as mentioned, that the procurement procedure was not followed to the T. So in order to make sure that we are in line once we're audited, we want to make sure that we had all the corrective actions steps in place so that the auditors will understand that we are familiar that with the procedures that are necessary in this case, as well as make sure that we will follow it going forward. We did receive a response from the Palm Beach County auditors with our process, and that they were satisfied and felt that they were impressed with the way we took action in this matter.
Thank you. Mr. Diaz?
So the takeaway is there were changes in procedure, but also I think it's really important to highlight it wasn't just on city staff. It was kind of a perfect storm on their end. Things went wrong on their end, things were overlooked on our end, and it just kind of worked together to put us in this situation. So it wasn't necessarily anything egregious or anything. It just kind of, as Vice Mayor puts it, stuff happens.
And I think it actually, on some level, it's an opportunity, because to find out that something like this can happen, the city manager had the opportunity, presented her with the opportunity to go, oh, wait, this is something we need to address. And the entire staff was.
Right. And also, I meant to mention also in the process, we wanted to be fully transparent on the situation by bringing this to the commission to ratify because of the total amount. But each individual work order, certainly under the authority of the city manager to approve. But because of the collective amount, we felt that that should be brought to the commission for full transparency, as well as it being something that we want to make sure that our auditors are satisfied with, so that they can show that we have brought this to the light and showed that we are making the corrective plan.
And you're to be commended for that. It could have, somebody else might have just kind of slipped it by 25, whatever. But you pulled that. I think that shows.
We want to make sure.
It shows also the public, not only our commitment to transparency, but your actual personal commitment to transparency.
Absolutely.
Ms. Stokes.
Yeah, the thing that I understand all of that. The thing that I'm struggling with is that this has been going on for a year and a half. So it goes all the way back to February 22. So I appreciate the self-reporting and everything else that's happening a year and a half later. And it makes me nervous that that something like this could go unnoticed for so long. Do we, as part of all of your new procedures, do you have, when you are onboarding new employees in any department, do we have onboarding procedures in place? So if you are a new employee and you are going to be overseeing, or if you are an employee that has been moved to a new position, are you going to be, as part of that position, you need to get that training, not in 3 months when procurement does it for the whole staff. Like, that's your job. So you should, how are you not getting that training week one? How are you not doing that? This would never fly in the company that I work for, ever.
I think this employee was employed at the time that Ms. Davis took over.
Well, like I said, there is turnover and we have to make sure, and I agree with you, Commissioner Stokes, that we have to ensure that as we turn over and we train, we are carrying that knowledge on. So certainly we'll be more diligent in that. And as mentioned by Commissioner Diaz, talking about a perfect storm, we did have a combination of some hiccups with the contractor. As you can see, this is with one contractor. So this is not a number of items or activities by multiple contractors. It's one contractor, which had some personal issues within the contract, because there is another part of the procedure where the contractor submits their invoice for us to process. And so this, when we talk perfect storm, that's the other part of the process, which caused some delays in how this is followed. So,
And I also want to just point out that there's been a change in the leadership of the finance department since all of this was happening. And I think that's
true.
without saying anything more, that's a significant factor.
I
Yeah,
don't
but-
see how you can blame this on our
No,
finance
I'm not
department. I
blaming
think that is out of line.
No,
No,
and that's so.
we can't keep blaming the same person for everything that comes back here that we have to correct
Ms.
because it
Stokes.
wasn't done properly.
Ms. Stokes.
Because I'm tired of having to come in. If I vote no on this, if we vote no on this, we could get sued. Contractors for a year and a half been doing work in this city under the improper procedure, and now we have to come in and we have to fix it, just like we had to do with the position count, and the increases to the budget.
Well,
These are significant
They
things.
got paid.
And hopefully help.
Please don't.
That we can't keep blaming an employee that's not here any longer for every mistake that's been made. We
Okay.
can't do that.
I haven't
It's
heard that
unacceptable.
really going on, but okay, let's go to Mr. McBoyd. Has his light on?
I am quite concerned. I also find the statement that, well, we changed finance directors to be totally gratuitous and rather unreasonable to throw somebody who's not here. This procedure comes out of the electric utility. The finance director doesn't know when emergency work or even non-emergency work is done in electric utility and isn't the person who is in any position to fix a problem of reporting stuff.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not done. I'll
Go
let
ahead.
you know when I'm done.
Mr. McBoyd, you
The
don't have a
respect
nasty
is when I have the floor, please do not take it away.
I didn't take you one.
The-
All right, Mr. McBoyd, please finish up.
Please proceed would be the polite thing to say at that point. I have a problem with the statement that things were not followed to a T. That is a ridiculous under description of a problem where something occurs repeatedly over a year and a half plus. There should have been a procedure in place. This is not some weird kind of thing. The fact that there are invoices or not invoices, it's kind of irrelevant because you have a standing contract with somebody or other. You know about what the cost is. Even if you don't have an invoice, you can still, as the electric utility, put something in to finance, to procurement and say, hey, we did this work. We're not quite sure what the invoice is, but we want you to know that, you know, this happened and it has a cost associated with it. And it's going to be in the ballpark of 40 to 7 or whatever. That could have been done. It is unclear to me why this repeatedly over 12 to 13 times happened over that long a period. That doesn't strike me as a minor thing, and $400,000 is not a minor amount of money. So yes, we've done some corrective actions. We've done some things to try to take care of it and prevent it from the future. I think there is more to be done as far as figuring out how did this come about. And I would also want to be very clear that very careful when that process of figuring out how it came about, that we don't throw somebody under the bus. That you really figure out what procedures were missing, who was not trained when there was a turnover of personnel. Why were they not trained? And really, it would be too convenient to find somebody, oh, we'll just blame that person. So I do have a problem with this. I have a problem that we're asked to come and fix it and make it look good for the auditors and the inspector general. And I don't appreciate the idea of this kind of, well, 400,000, things happen. The things happen part is the emergencies that need to get fixed. Totally fine. There should be a procedure of how you deal with those and
that's
deal with this. There should have been a procedure over
Okay.
a period of several years.
Thank you. Public comment, Madam.
Ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's your left.
First of all, I want to say thank you to the city manager and to staff for bringing this forward. You could have just swept this under the rug at under $50,000 each occurrence and just handled it. But you brought it forward, because if you break each invoice out separately, that's what you could have done. But you brought it all together, you alerted all of us. I know that on my one-on-one, you've already explained yourself and what happened. So this is more of a show for the public. So that I'm gonna digress. Can you, Kat, please start calling us the city of Lake Worth Beach? They cash a check from Lake Worth Beach, it should say Lake Worth Beach. Besides that, mistakes happen. I'm the CFO of my businesses. Sometimes when we go through and we start auditing places that owe us money for Silver Sneakers or Divinity Health, and we go through and we go, they haven't paid us for the last 2.5 months for this one client. Why? Well, it was a discrepancy between the date of birth, their address, whatever. But it takes me breaking down the records and going line by line, and it takes sometimes 12, 15 hours of my week to do so. That doesn't say that I'm lackadaisical or I'm lazy or I don't care about my money. It's just once you start dissecting things, sometimes when you're running businesses, you have to get to the root of what happened. We're not placing blame. Instead of placing blame, I want to say, thank you for bringing it forward. Thank you for clearing it up now. And thank you for putting a policy in place that this won't happen anymore. So don't feel as though you're being put down, belittled, or any of the above, even though the tone in the room always has to take a turn for the worse when it comes to cleaning up messes. Again, like the mayor has said before, it's not my fault, but it's our problem. And the way we do things, again, you don't have to have a tone of anger. And I'm going to pray for every person who sits on this dais and whatever makes you angry, because you don't have to be angry to get your point across. You don't have to be rude, and you don't have to talk over people. And you don't have to take 15 minutes of the allotted 30 minutes that we'll all have to share to rehash what we've already heard. Let's just be respectful. So thank you, city manager, for bringing this forward. Thank you for being clear in all of our one-on-ones on how this happened. And I'm sorry that some people have to stand on a soapbox and talk down to you and the rest of the staff to make themselves look better or feel better. I don't believe in it. So I apologize on behalf of the entire commission. Thank you for catching this and thank you for fixing it.
Thank you. We have one public comment, Ms. Fisher.
Peggy Fisher, 8th Street, Lake Worth Beach. I was going to say thank you to staff, to the city manager, having done purchase orders in a government situation. I know that quite often invoices don't get to you right when everything's done. It can be weeks, it can be months, and you can follow up and still not get it. I think everything that you went through and did and set up and reached out to the inspector general was absolutely the right thing. Now, as far as the word respect, there is not a lot of respect from certain people on this dais. And I know for a fact that is because, of course, I was told I had a dark soul. So given that I know I don't, that was no respect to me at my own home. You know who you are, who do not respect the mayor as the person that runs this meeting. And if she says we're going to take a recess, or we're going to go to staff, or we're going to do this, she's in charge. And if you can't take that, then learn how to pull up your big boy pants and be respectful. Because you and someone else on this dais certainly is not respectful.
Thank you.
Neither are.
Okay, we have, no, there's no response. We have a motion and a second. Do I have, all in favor? Aye.
Who is the second, Madam Mayor?
Malega.
Malega. Do we have, what's the vote? Aye. Malega? Aye.
Nay.
Okay. Mr. McBoy is the dissenting vote. G. Next up, Transmission Operator Alliance Agreement. May we have a little introduction?
Yes, Madam Mayor, for the record, Ed Liberty, Electric Utility Director. This item is related to compliance activities with federal regulations that are required as a part of us bringing a second tie line in the city. We currently have a single tie line, as you all know, and when you have a connection to the transmission system, and and in our case, we're transmission owners, you're required to register with the federal government and follow certain compliance activities. These are administered by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and the North American, what we call NERC Regulatory Commission as well. So we currently have responsive owner, transmission planner, and transmission operator. With respect to the current system, the transmission operator functions are performed for us by Florida Power and Light under an agreement that goes back decades, as far as I can tell. When we build the second interconnection to the FPL system, the level of complexity driven by, in theory, the level of impact that we could have on the bulk electric system goes up dramatically. The number of compliance activities that we have increase significantly. Not just paperwork that we have to follow, but also in terms of the number of control rooms we have to have, which is 2 control rooms that are capable of operating all the time. Basically a backup control room to the one we have now. And in terms of numbers of operators we have to have in the control room at any given time, no less than 1. Now we operate many days when there's only 1 operator in a shift. That operator could literally not leave the control room under the new rules. And a tremendous amount of record keeping, training, backup to the backup to the backup, a tremendous undertaking. When we looked at that and also took a look at the risk of a potential non-compliance and what that could mean in terms of potential penalties and fines to the city, we assessed the level of effort that it would take for us to not only be allowed to put the line in service. And the way that this works with the federal government, it's not as if you can put this line in service and then withstand an audit in the future. They audit you in advance of placing the line in service. So you have to have all of your procedures, your proper number of operators, all of the training and pop quizzes, if you will, when they come to audit to make sure you're ready to go. Fortunately, there are other utilities in the state that are in the same situation as us. Three other utilities have formed an alliance. We refer to it as a centralized transmission operator function. And they are working collaboratively together and sharing the expenses. In this case, the alliance is headed up by Orlando Utilities Commission, and it includes 2 others, which is Beaches Electric, and I got to correct KUA, Kissimmee Utilities Authority. Make sure I don't get that wrong.
Yep.
So they've teamed together and they're sharing expenses, and they built the framework of this alliance. They are willing to accept us into the alliance, and in exchange for us paying some initial setup charges. They basically have to model our system, and they have to train their operators on how to operate with the proper contingencies when they open and close energize equipment on our transmission system. Not the Hypoluxo interconnection that remains under control of Florida Power and Light under the longstanding agreement, but this would be for the canal interconnection. And then we would pick up a portion of the annual operating costs. We would also get seats on 2 key boards. There's 2 boards that govern the alliance, so it's not as if we just blindly go along. We would have a vote in how the alliance is managed. So the alliance would go from the current 3 to a number of 4, and that's how it would operate.
And this is something that's required?
We're required by law to become a transmission operator, and we'll be required by law to pass this audit and maintain compliance for as long as we are a transmission operator. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I see some lights on Ms. Malega. I think you were
Mr.
first.
McGuire was first.
Ms. Farraga, Mr. McBoy?
Am I correct in understanding that the annual expense for us would be 600,000? And that might be roughly, I don't know, but
Says 50.
No, I'm gonna
I
use,
mean,
I'm gonna
yeah.
have, Jason Bailey, our Assistant Director of System Operations, come up to help answer these questions, but the annual operating cost is about 600,000. In the first year, however, since we would be coming on for a part year, it's actually 400,000, but we have about $200,000 of setup costs on the part of the Alliance to integrate us into the process.
What's this?
So that's how it,
To waive the one-time $600,000.
that was a one-time fee that was not the initial setup
Oh.
cost.
Thank you.
I looked at Jason Bailey to,
And we're looking at Jason.
Yeah, the 585 that you've seen in there was what those three members paid to build the alliance. So that was anybody new that came in was going to pay the 585 to build all the infrastructure.
So anybody that comes in is going to pay that.
Right. They agreed to waive that for us to join. We only had to bring our stuff to the table, which is build our communications network to them and then them modeling our system into theirs.
And that's the
But-
585.
No, that's the 200,000. There's called out 100,000, 100,000
Oh,
for the first year. And then it's 50,000 per month. Approximately
50,000 per month.
is the membership fee. Yes.
And this is a benefit to the electric.
oh, absolutely.
Yes.
I also want to, take a moment to give a shout out to those three current members of the Alliance and their own alliance agreement requires this upfront payment. And they waived that for us
Hmm.
to have us join. So they are fellow board members at FMPA and FMEA, and we thank them greatly for being willing to do that.
Thank you. Mr. McBoy.
Thank you. 600,000 a year is not an insignificant chunk in the budget. It's not the end of the world, but it's not insignificant either. My question is there a document, an existing document that looked at the possible ways, mechanisms to give us increased reliability in the city? Certainly what we've heard for a while is a second tie line increases reliability, because if the first one goes out, then we're disconnected from the regional grid. There are other options for giving us increased reliability, one of which is that we decide to put money and energy into our own generation capacity or expand it, that then we don't care what the regional grid does, depending on how big that capacity that we put on. My question is there an existing document that discuss the different options of giving reliability and varying degrees of reliability and the costs associated with the different pathways that could have been considered? Is there an existing document that describes that?
That's a good question. And the answer is yes, there is. In 2018, we conducted the GTIP, or Generation and Transmission Improvement Plan. And there was a study that was done. It was really the backbone of the first resource plan that was conducted for us by our engineers together with Horizons Energy, that evaluated the opportunity or the possibility of building additional generation assets. So, and other things. Transmission line was one of those options, and the transmission line was the lower cost option. I'll point out that that same study looked very closely at adding diesels to the new power plant, adding additional capacity. And what may not be understood by everybody is that tie line is our sole source of support in keeping our system powered up. So if we were to lose a tie line, for example, we'd have to start up the current power plant, which is too small during most of the year to carry the full load. So we could not carry the city load with the existing power plant as the backup. And those units all date to the 1965 to 1978 vintage. So they are way beyond end of life. So we need to basically rebuild that. And on top of that, you'd have the lag time. So if you lost the tie line, even the quickest start units would probably be a minimum of a half hour to an hour before you were able to get those units online and then line up all of the switching to begin re-energizing the rest of the city. So the cost to build a power plant of that size, and I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but certainly was called out in that study. The other part of it is fuel to the power plant. So that power plant that we have today is fueled by a high pressure natural gas pipeline, which goes all the way up to the Florida Gas Transmission System, some number of miles to the west. That contract was assumed by the city circa 2003, thereabouts. There's about 13 to 15 years remaining on that contract after which it expires. So we are the sole users of that piece of pipe. And that contract is with Florida Public Utilities, a local natural gas company. So if we were to build, let's say, a 20 to 30-year asset of power generation, it would be built hanging on a gas line, which only has maybe 14 years remaining. So we're a little bit of a hostage situation there in terms of having to negotiate that contract because there's no other way to get natural gas fuel to the plant. In addition to that, we'd have to have generation with emissions associated with it right in the middle of our city, right off of A Street, for example, on College Ave. So that was problematic. And it was my understanding that this was an issue that was discussed by FMPA and the city many, many years ago, probably 10 to 15 years ago. And at that point, the city commission was reluctant to build more generation in the city. There was a period of time when the city was willing to do that, which is when the AES unit was commissioned or had its groundbreaking circa 2001, 2002. And that project eventually went into bankruptcy and didn't go forward. So these things were evaluated in that 2018 study. And we could certainly make that available, but that was evaluated. I'll point out that part of the cost of building the interconnection to the FPL system through a successful win-win negotiation with Florida Power & Light, they agreed to build to us, and we agreed to build the facilities to receive the tie line. So not only did we get not only was the tie line at a much lower cost than building generation, but the ultimate negotiation with Florida Power & Light yielded an even lower cost for us, which was a good outcome. But I think your question is right on point. Is a proper question to ask.
And I guess, this is all helpful information, and I fully understand that there are not single right answers to this kind of approach. There are, as you just raised, if you're going to burn something right here in town, well, if it's natural gas, that's probably going to be clean. It's not the end of the world. If it's diesel, that's not clean at all. And we have a mix of generation, and if we wanted to switch it all over, then you have the issue of we're beholden. We would be, they would certainly charge us quite a bit when they renewed that contract, I'm sure. Could we get it better? I have no idea. And I think you're referring to I forget what the word was, but it basically was the Enron situation that from my understanding, we were we were started on building a decent sized plant. And what I remember, because it also came up when I was previous on the commission, there were options of, well, if we built a decent enough plant, we could supply ourselves. We could also be a bigger plant and sell when we didn't need it. Maybe there's some financial benefit, who knows? My follow-up question is, did the document that did look at these various options and put it on paper and come to some conclusion, did it include this $600,000 a year cost?
I'd have to go back and take a look at that to see if it included that cost, but it included, it was a high level study, and it included the various generation options. And I'm not sure if it included additional compliance costs, but what I can say though is that by having a second tie line, it puts us in a position to retire steam assets. Those steam assets represent an operating cost of about $2.4 to $2.6 million a year of operating costs to keep those very old assets alive. And that does not address the replacement of cooling towers, which are well beyond end of life and are structurally a question, and retubing of the boiler. So we're basically plugging and patching weekly or monthly as we go to keep them running. So that 2.6 million does not include the avoided cost of those capital improvements that would be required of the existing plant. So there's a number of, when you look at that goes into and goes out of the pluses, the minuses, we stand to have a significant reduction in operating costs by doing this. And that has been forecasted, by the way, in our Stantec pro formas, the 10-year models that we look at, since the 2019 budget was first put together. So it's been in there. It's been kicked out every year as the project took longer and longer to come together and reach a satisfactory agreement with our a win-win situation with our neighbors across the street. But it's in that 10-year projection in the workbook, in the Stantec workbooks.
Thank you.
The other reason that I kind of keep in mind the on-site generation is one of the things that we've talked about. As a policy, we've moved to more and more solar generation, which is great during the day when the sun shines. It's not so great at night. battery storage is getting there, but it's not fully in the financial range at the moment. And what I've often wondered about is, well, would it have made sense? Would it make sense for us to do our own supplement of natural gas burning to supplement the solar stuff? And would that be a sensible way to go to balance those things out?
I
I don't have the answer, but I'm concerned that, we should make sure as we're looking at our alternatives that we've got all the costs and expenses and stuff on the table, so we're making
Thank you. Ms. Malega?
the wisest.
Thank you, ma'am. So I wasn't on the dais previously, but when I had a phone conversation with you last week, in regards to this, my first question was this included with Stantec? And all the modeling we've been seeing and included in the rates that we've discussed?
Yes, it was.
And it's also, I called Yannick and said, is it part of the budget that we've been talking about? And he said, yes. So with that being said, I make a motion to approve. Oh, we already did that.
Read it already.
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
I had a question because there's still language in an agreement about adding new members. Is there like at least a rumor that more members are being added? Because if there's one more, 20% is a lot better than 25%. But I guess the other part of that question is if new members jump on to this alliance, does the operating costs increase proportionally?
Or did it go down?
My expectation is that it would stay the same or go down slightly because you'd be dividing it amongst, at that time, if we're the fourth, you wouldn't have been dividing it, among five. There is a remote possibility of a fifth. I don't want to disclose them at this point. They're currently, working under a regulatory interpretation, and this would not apply to them because of the way that their system is configured. In our case, it would apply to us. And one of the key things for us is we want to be served off a loop. So you think of this as a shoelace, if you will, or an extension cord. We're served from one end of the extension cord to the other end of the extension cord. When we build this second tie line, we'll have two extension cords that meet in the middle that come from different sources. And whether we lose power from one end of the cord or the other, our residents, our customers should not see a blink. Under the current scenario, if you're only fed from one side, you have to then quickly scramble, roll the fire truck, right? Start that plant up, and the operators do a fantastic job, but there's time to do that. And then you have to realign the whole electric switching infrastructure, then begin restoring power from one end of the system to the other, which would then take hours. The other option is to have a breaker in the middle where you break before you make is the term, but then you'd have high energy transfers happening through switches, and you could have a few minutes of outage where the entire city goes dark. And then you have to bring it back and hope that as you come back, when you get that what we call the cold inrush, you don't create more problems. So this is a very sophisticated look and gives us the same level of transmission reliability as all of our friends across the street enjoy.
Good. We have a motion and a second, or all in favor?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Next up is item H, which is the approval of contracts with L.E. Myers Company, Michaels Power, Inc., Wilco Electrical LLC, and Hooper Corporation to provide construction services to the electric utility system hardening and reliability improvement program. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Ms. Stokes?
I'm just curious if we have, so these are for future contracts that we're not sure what we're going to be using them for exactly right now.
Well, these are actually meant for the construction for all of our system hardening and the reliability improvement programs. So we basically pre-bid and shortlist several contractors, and we have them on a unit prices for the period of 3 years. Once we have a job coming up, we send engineering drawings, they provide us with the quotes, and then we issue work orders for the work that needs to be completed. We have these contracts for last 5 years. This is now the new set of the contracts.
So
Okay.
this creates a pool.
Yes, creates a pool of the contractors that then we use for large projects.
So that's why we don't have a fiscal impact analysis. 'Cause we
Yes,
don't
that's
know
correct,
how much
because
is going to go to them versus another
No,
person in that pool.
so no, it's actually, if we have these 4 contractors, we're going to send the request for quotations, and then we're going to get a cost for the project. We will start working on a work order, and then this work order is going to be brought to you for the approval, and that's when we're going to have a financial impact.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. McBoy?
My only question is, or indicating of a preference is, as I think everybody knows up here, I always prefer that we do as much as possible with our own city employees and only go outside for contract when it's impossible to do that. Does this, and I understand this is sort of a reserve contract situation where if you need them, they're there and they present their qualifications to make sure they're all right. Do we have any provision in this that makes sure that we do as much as possible in-house? And particularly, I mean, it probably won't apply for another several years, but as we build our bench with the apprentice program, we will have more, in theory, nobody leaves. We'll have more in-house people available. Do we have any provision, or can at least we get a verbal commitment that we will always try to do it in-house before we go out-house? So
I think
that's kind of the Sam area.
Yeah, I think Mr. Liberty has addressed that in the past, that we always start with our people, correct?
Correct. And you have my standing commitment that our first choice is to try to do work with our own people to the extent that they're capable of doing the work involved. So for example, there may be civil work or structural work that our folks don't do or require equipment that we don't own.
Right.
But certainly for the last, I'd say couple of years or more, at any given day, we've had 25 to 50% of our line department involved with new construction. And they're assigned for that virtually every day unless there's something major has happened and needs a repair. So that's the process. And that's allowing, if you remember, during the budget discussions, we plan on spending, $1.5, $1.7 million, I think the exact number of on our own staff doing capital work. We will continue to evaluate when we take a look at the labor costs going down the road, kind of a strategic plan and say, given where contractor costs are, does it make sense for us to add even more, and do more work that we can do, but in-house, but that requires a big investment. Every crew we put out, there's another $500,000 in trucks, if you can get the trucks right now, right? And tools and equipment. So you have to keep that in mind. But yeah, we want to use our folks as much as possible on capital work, especially capital work that is funded by a bond.
Thank you. Mr. Diaz?
Yeah, I was just gonna point out, I believe not, well, I know, I don't remember what year it came out, but there's an older MOU, memorandum of understanding, that basically ensures that, or makes sure that our first choices are in-house.
Yep. Okay, so do I have, we have a motion, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. On to next one. Agenda item I. Approval of contracts with NewCat Corporation, Teamwork Net Inc., and PowerServe Technologies Inc. for professional services to perform electrical equipment inspection, testing, repair, and maintenance for the city's electric utility.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second? All, any questions? All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. J. Agreement with Bermex Inc. for the reading of electric and water utility meters during emergency situations. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second? Is it a motion to approve?
Yes, motion to approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Second. Oh.
Nobody, and then everybody. We're gonna give that one to Mr. Diaz, I think.
Sure.
Mr. Diaz, your lights on?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Does this also cover the readers for the opt-out people?
Yes, they would. This would be an emergency service that could be used to read any meter that we need them to read in the city, whether it's electric or water, and whether they're in the opt-out program or opt-in.
Okay, because they need to be regularly checked the old school way if they opt out, right?
So we do, we use AMI to read meters, and we also have a meter reading staff of our own. This is in the event that we have to do massive amounts of meter reads beyond what our staff can do. We would engage an outside resource and they plug and go.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Up next, item K, which is waiver of procurement process and agreement with Gresco Utility Supply, the purchase and delivery of 27 kV capacitator banks. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. As is unanimous.
Are we giving the second to Diaz?
We can give the second to Diaz. Give the second to Diaz. He's quiet. Okay, number L, item L, resolution 47-2023, designate Vaughn Haydock as the city's board member for the East Central Regional Water Reclamation Facility, or the ECR.
Motion to.
As, let me just finish that, as Sam Petty, usually I don't try to slow you down. Sam Petty's our alternate member representing Lake Worth Beach. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Item number M, piggyback agreement with Trip Electric for pump, motor, and equipment services. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Item number N, third amendment to the agreement with Allied Universal Corporation to purchase sodium hypochlorite bleach for water treatment and odor control. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
What?
Second.
We're
Give
gonna
it
give
to
that to
Chris.
Mick. We're gonna give it to Chris and second, all in favor?
Wait, Sarah.
Oh, sorry, Sarah.
I had a conversation with, procurement in regards to this. And I want to say thank you to the finance department for always answering my questions and being empathetic and sympathetic to my dumb questions sometimes. When I see things being from 2020 and we're in 2023 and doing additional amendments and we're giving them more contracts, I always question, when are we going to go back out to bid? You know, what is the policy on this? So I just want to say thank you to staff for always answering my questions.
And you're comfortable with the.
Yes.
Good. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank, passed unanimously. Item number O. Piggyback agreement with Miller Pipeline LLC for the provision of wastewater collection system rehabilitation services, and they need to be rehabilitated. Do I have a motion?
Motion approved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Item number P. Yes, agreement for the on-call large pipeline contractor services with Amici Engineering Contractors LLC. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
One more.
I know, what I just want to go back, I was amazed, and this is just for the public. The city is responsible for maintaining 150 miles of wastewater lines, and that's just a very impressive number. Thank you. It goes out. Okay, Q. Purchase order with PSI Technologies for a Wheelo sewage pump for the Regional Master Pump Station. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, everybody.